The galaxy had watched humanity for 300 years. The elder races studied them like scientists study animals. The insect like Vreth, the fish like Deloni, and the giant Keth all agreed on one thing. Humans were soft. Humans were weak. Humans were prey. They had good reasons to think this way. Humans built hospitals on distant worlds. They sent food and medicine to strangers. They talked instead of fighting. They traded instead of taking. Every species in the galaxy fell into one of two groups. You were either a hunter or you were food. Humanity, the aliens decided, was food. Lucy Harmon was the commander of a small ship called the Starboard Dawn. She was 53 years old with gray hair and kind eyes. She had 2 grandchildren back on Earth. She had spent her whole life exploring space and helping people. She had never fired a weapon at another living thing. Her ship was mapping rocks in the outer parts of human space when the message came through. It was a distress call. The voice on the other end was shaking with fear. "This is Governor Pete Dawson of Colony Myra 7. We are under attack. Unknown enemies. They will not talk to us. They are taking our people." The voice broke into a sob. "They are taking our children." Lucy stood very still. Her hands gripped the metal rail in front of her. Around her, the crew had stopped moving. Everyone was listening. "How far away is Myra 7? Lucy asked. 6 hours at top speed, said her first officer, Danny Cole. He was young, maybe 25, with nervous eyes. "Commander, the rules say we should wait for military ships. We are just a science vessel. We have no weapons." Lucy looked at him. "Those are our people, Danny. We are going." The Starboard Dawn flew through space as fast as its engines could manage. Lucy stood at the front window and watched the stars blur past. She thought about her own grandchildren. She thought about the children of Myra 7. When they arrived, Lucy wished they had not come. The colony was destroyed. The glass domes that had protected the buildings were shattered. Smoke rose from burned homes. Bodies lay in the streets, twisted and still. But there were not enough bodies. Lucy counted maybe 100 dead. The colony had held over 8,000 people. "Where is everyone?" Danny whispered. Lucy knew the answer. She just did not want to say it. They landed the ship and walked through the ruins. Lucy brought her medical officer, a quiet woman named Grace Kim. Grace was good at staying calm. But even she was shaking now. They found toys scattered in the street. Clothes, shoes, a little pink shoe with stars on it. Sized for a child of maybe 4 or 5. Grace picked it up. Her hands trembled. What kind of creature does this? What kind of monster takes children? They searched until they found the colony's message center. Most of the equipment was destroyed, but one small computer still worked. Lucy plugged it in and found the last transmission the colony had received before the attack. The message was short. It came from something called the Vrak Dominion, a slaver empire from the far edge of the galaxy. So far away that even the great elder races had only heard rumors about them. The message said, "You are prey. Your kind will serve us." Lucy sent everything back to Earth. Every picture, every recording, every word. She expected the politicians to send diplomats. She expected long meetings and careful plans. She expected the slow, peaceful response that humanity was famous for. She was wrong about what came next. On Earth, the news spread in hours. People watched the footage on every screen. They saw the destroyed colony. They saw the empty streets. They saw the little pink shoe with stars on it. Something changed. No one could explain it later. It was like a switch had been flipped in the human mind. A part of them that had been sleeping for 100 years suddenly woke up. A very old part. A very dangerous part. The Parliament met the next day. Hundreds of representatives shouted at each other. Some wanted to talk to the aliens. Some wanted to ask the elder races for help. Some wanted to wait and gather more information. Then Admiral Kate Vance stood up. She was 70 years old, small and thin, with white hair pulled back in a tight knot. Her family had been soldiers for 6 generations. But Kate herself had never fought a battle. She had spent her career helping people after disasters. She ran hospital ships and food deliveries. She was known as one of the kindest officers in the fleet. But when she spoke, her voice was like ice. "We have 300 ships that can travel between stars," she said. "Most of them carry food or sick people or scientists. We have no warships, no battle training, no military at all." She paused and looked around the room. "But we have factories that can change in one night. We have engineers who can turn mining tools into weapons. And we have billions of people who just learned that someone took our children." She smiled, and there was nothing kind in that smile. "We also have something else. Something very old. Something we thought we had left behind forever. The Vrak think we are prey." Her eyes were hard as stone. "They are about to learn what happens when prey decides to hunt." The vote was not close. Every single representative voted yes. The word went out to every human colony, every space station, every ship. The factories that made farming equipment started making weapons. The scientists who studied medicine started studying how to hurt aliens. Old soldiers, some of them 80 or 90 years old, came out of retirement to teach young people how to fight. People who had never held a weapon lined up to volunteer. Mothers who had spent their lives raising children asked for combat training. Grandfathers who had spent decades building things learned how to destroy. The elder races sent a messenger to Earth. His name was Executor Vorn, and he was a Keth. The Keth were the top hunters in the galaxy. Vorn stood 12 feet tall with armor-like skin and claws that could cut through metal. He looked down at the small humans and felt sorry for them. "You cannot fight the Vrak," he said. "They have conquered 17 species. They have thousands of warships. You are peaceful creatures with no idea how to make war. You should accept your nature and let us negotiate for you." Kate Vance looked up at the giant alien. She barely reached his waist. But she did not look afraid. "Let me tell you about humans," she said softly. "We do not have claws or armor or fangs. We did not need them. We had something better. We could chase an animal across an entire continent until it died from exhaustion. We did not fight our prey. We hunted it. And now your friends in the Vrak Dominion have made themselves our prey." Vorn left Earth very confused. He told the other elder races that humans were crazy, that they were going to get themselves killed, that they should be pitied. He had no idea what he had just witnessed. The hunt was about to begin. 63 days after the attack on Mira 7, the first human fleet jumped into Vrak space. If you could call it a fleet. 47 ships, most of them cargo haulers and science vessels that had been changed into warships in a matter of weeks. The paint on their new armor was still fresh. The weapons welded to their hulls had never been fired in real combat. Against them stood the Vrak Dominion, an empire of slavers that had never lost a war. The Vrak commanders laughed when they saw the human ships. These were the creatures who wanted to fight them? These small, soft, peaceful things? They sent 20 warships to crush the humans. It would be easy, they thought. It would be over in minutes. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 11 human ships were destroyed. All 20 Vrak warships were burning wreckage floating in the dark of space. Across the galaxy. Alien intelligence officers watched the battle recordings over and over. They could not understand what they were seeing. The humans had not fought like prey, but they had not fought like normal predators either. They had fought like something else entirely. They had fought like hunters. Ben Torres was a cargo ship captain before the war. He was 40 years old, with rough hands and a thick beard. He had spent his life moving supplies between colonies. Boring work. Safe work. Now his ship, renamed the Defiance, had guns where the cargo used to be. And his crew of peaceful haulers were learning how to kill. He wrote in his personal log after that, "First battle. The Vrak expected us to run or surrender. They expected a normal fight, ship against ship, gun against gun. We did not give them that. We hit them and disappeared. We led them into traps. When they tried to retreat, we followed. When they tried to regroup, we were already there. We did not try to win a battle. We tried to end them completely." This was something the Vrak had never seen before. On Earth, scientists had a name for it. Persistence hunting. It was how ancient humans had survived before they had weapons or tools. They would chase an animal for hours, sometimes days, never stopping, never resting, until the animal simply collapsed from exhaustion. The Vrak did not understand persistence. When they were losing, they expected their enemy to accept the victory and go home. But the humans did not go home. They kept coming. Always coming. The Vrak hierarch sent a message to the human fleet. He offered to return half of the prisoners in exchange for peace. It was a generous offer by Vrak standards. No prey species had ever gotten such terms. Admiral Kate Vance broadcast a reply across all frequencies, so everyone could hear. "We want all of them, and we are coming to get them." Back on Earth, the whole planet had changed. The peaceful civilization of farmers and builders and healers had transformed into something else. Something older. Something that had been sleeping inside humanity for thousands of years. Maria Reyes was a scientist who had spent her whole life studying alien animals. She loved her work. She loved learning about new creatures and how they lived. Now, she sat in a military lab studying how to kill aliens instead. She called her husband one night through a video screen. Her eyes were tired, and her voice was flat. "I spent 20 years learning how to understand other species," she said. "Now I am learning how to destroy them. I do not know how I feel about that." Her husband was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Feel however you need to feel. Just bring those kids home." The second human fleet was larger. 80 ships. They attacked the Vrak supply station and captured it without destroying it. Inside, they found computer records showing where the slave ships traveled. They found maps of Vrak space. They found lists of how many slaves were kept on each world. The third fleet was larger still. 120 ships. They used the captured maps to find a slave convoy and destroyed it. But they did not kill the slaves inside. They rescued them. The freed prisoners were not human. They were a species called the Tyranni. Small, thin creatures with big eyes and gentle voices. The Vrak had kept them as slaves for over 200 years. When the Tyranni realized they were free, they could not believe it. Their leader, an old female with scars on her arms from years of chains, looked at the humans with confusion. "Why?" she asked through a translator machine. "We are not your people. We are nothing to you. Why did you risk your lives for us?" Corporal Amy Chun was a young Marine who had been studying to be a cook before the war. She was 22 years old, with short black hair and a quick smile. She looked at the freed slaves, at their thin bodies and frightened eyes, and she felt something hot and angry rise in her chest. "You are people," she said simply. "That is enough." The Tyranni became humanity's first allies in the war. They did not have weapons or ships, but they had knowledge. They knew Vrak space. They knew Vrak secrets. They knew where the slaves were kept and how the masters thought, and they were not the only ones. Word spread through the slave worlds of the Vrak Dominion. A new species had come. Soft creatures from a distant part of the galaxy. They fought like demons but freed everyone they found. They did not take slaves for themselves. They just let people go. The Morthi joined humanity next. Then the Selvek. Then the Jorth. Species that had been crushed under wrack boots for generations now saw hope for the first time. And that hope had a human face. Nick Palmer was a young officer who had worked in an asteroid mine before the war. Now he commanded a destroyer called the Persistence. He had named it himself after he learned about how ancient humans used to hunt. "We will never stop," he told his crew before every battle. "That is our greatest weapon. Not our guns, not our ships. Our refusal to quit. The Vrak have never faced anything like us. They do not know how to fight an enemy that will not give up." He was right. The Vrak were confused. Their strategies assumed that enemies would eventually accept defeat. That was how every war they had ever fought had ended. The prey species would resist for a while, then surrender, then become slaves. But humans would not surrender. Every time the Vrak thought the war was over, the humans attacked again. Every time they thought they had won a battle, the humans came back stronger. It was like fighting water. You could push it away, but it always returned. The Vrak began to feel something they had never felt before. Fear. They were the masters of 17 worlds. They had crushed every species they had ever met. They were the greatest slavers in the galaxy. And now something was hunting them. The Galactic Concord held an emergency meeting. The great elder races sat in their ancient chamber and watched recordings of human battles. They watched the small, soft creatures tear through Vrak fleets. They watched freed slaves cheering for their human rescuers. They watched the Vrak Dominion, an empire that had seemed unbeatable, start to crumble. Executor Vorn stood before the council. The giant Keth no longer looked at humans with pity. Now there was something else in his eyes. Something close to respect. And something close to fear. "They have won 23 battles," he reported. "They've lost 64 ships. But they've destroyed over 200 Vrak warships. They have freed 50,000 slaves of 12 different species." He paused. "They show no signs of stopping." The Vreth ambassador made a clicking noise with her insect mouth. "This is impossible. They are a prey species. They have no warrior caste. They have no predator instincts. Our analysis was correct. They should have surrendered months ago." "Your analysis was wrong," said the Deloni representative, floating in a tank of water. "We all were wrong. We looked at their behavior and saw cooperation. We saw trade and hospitals and peace treaties. We thought this made them weak. It did not?" asked the Vreth. "No, it made them strong. They cooperate better than any species we have ever seen. They share resources. They trust each other. And now they are using that cooperation to wage war." The Deloni's voice was thoughtful. "We made a terrible mistake. We confused kindness for weakness. They are not the same thing." Meanwhile, the war continued. Captain Julia West commanded a destroyer called the Unbroken. She was 38 years old, with short brown hair and a scar on her cheek from a battle 3 months ago. Before the war, she had been a passenger ship captain. She had flown tourists to see beautiful planets and distant stars. Now she flew into hell. Her mission was simple: go deep into Vrak territory and gather information about their slave processing centers. Find out where the human children were being kept. Get the information back to the fleet. It was supposed to be a quick mission. In and out. No fighting. It did not work that way. The Vrak had set a trap. 5 warships were waiting in the darkness, hidden behind a moon. They attacked the Unbroken from all sides. Julia lost half her crew in the first 10 minutes. Her ship was burning. Her engines were failing. Every logical part of her brain said she should surrender. Maybe the Vrak would take her as a slave instead of killing her. She did not surrender. "All power to weapons," she ordered. "Ram the lead ship if you have to. We are not stopping." The Unbroken fought for 3 hours. When Julia finally escaped into faster-than-light travel, her ship was barely holding together. 47 of her crew were dead. The rest were wounded, but she had the information. She had found the main slave processing center. She knew where the children were. She flew back to human space and delivered her report. Then the doctors tried to force her to rest. She had not slept in 4 days. She had burns on her arms and a piece of metal stuck in her leg. "No," she said. "I saw what they do to slaves. I saw the processing rooms. I am not resting until every one of those places is ash." Stories like Julia's spread through the human fleet. They spread through the allied species too. The Terrani told their children about the human captain who would not quit. The Morthi sang songs about the soft creatures who fought like fire. But there were other stories too. Quieter ones. Stories about a different kind of strength. Dr. Marcus Webb ran a field hospital near the front lines of the war. He was a surgeon, 50 years old, with gentle hands and tired eyes. He had joined the military to save lives, not to take them. One day, his medics brought in a wounded Vrak soldier. The alien was dying. His fellow soldiers had left him behind when they retreated. Some of the hospital staff did not want to help. This was the enemy. This was a slaver. Let him die. Marcus looked at them with disappointment. He is a patient. We treat patients. He worked for 6 hours to save the Vrak's life. When the alien finally woke up, he stared at Marcus with confusion. "Why?" the Vrak asked. His voice was rough and weak. "My people would have let you die. We would have made you a slave. Why did you save me?" Marcus cleaned his surgical tools and did not look up. "Because that is the difference between us. We are fighting to stop what you do. We are not fighting to become what you are." The story of Dr. Webb spread too. The Galactic Concord heard about it. The freed slaves heard about it. Even the Vrak heard about it. The humans were confusing. They fought like monsters but healed like saints. They showed no mercy in battle, but showed kindness to prisoners. They were terrifying and gentle at the same time. The Vrak High Command held their own meeting. The war was going badly. They had lost too many ships, too many soldiers, too many slave worlds. Species that had been under Vrak control for centuries were now rebelling, inspired by the human example. "We must end this war," said one of the commanders. "Offer them terms. Give them back their prisoners. Everything. Just make them stop." The Supreme Hierarch shook his head. His scales were dark with age, his eyes cold with pride. "We are the Vrak Dominion. We do not surrender to prey." "They are not prey," the commander said quietly. "I do not know what they are, but they are not prey." The Hierarch ignored him. He ordered every available ship to return to the homeworld. If the humans wanted to fight, they would face the full power of the Vrak at the place of Vrak choosing. He thought this would end the war. He was right about that. Just not in the way he expected. In human space, Admiral Kate Vance received reports from her spies. The Vrak were gathering their fleet. They were preparing for a final defense. Kate looked at the star maps and smiled her cold smile. "Good," she said. "I was getting tired of chasing them. Now we can end this." She gave the order. Every human ship, every allied vessel, every fighter and bomber and troop transport, all of them would jump to the Vrak homeworld. The hunt was almost over. The prey had nowhere left to run. The human fleet jumped into Vrak space on a day that would be remembered for 1,000 years. 400 ships. The largest force humanity had ever gathered. They appeared in the darkness above the Vrak homeworld, like stars coming to life. Behind them came the allied ships. Terrani vessels, Morthi cruisers, Selvik fighters. Species that had been slaves now flew beside their liberators. Admiral Kate Vance stood on the bridge of the Relentless. Her flagship was scarred from months of battle. Burn marks covered the hull. Patches of fresh metal showed where holes had been repaired. But the ship still flew, and Kate still commanded. She looked at the world below. A gray planet covered in factories and slave pens and the towers of the Wrackmasters. Somewhere down there were the children of Myra 7, or what remained of them after 18 months. How many ships do they have? She asked. Her tactical officer checked his screens. His face went pale. Over 1,000, Admiral. Plus orbital weapons platforms. Plus planetary shields. They have everything. Kate nodded slowly. She had expected this. Then we give them everything too. The Vrak Supreme Hierarch sent a transmission. His image appeared on the human screens. He was old and proud and utterly confident. "You have come far, Prey," he said. "Farther than any species in our history. But this is our home. Our fortress. You cannot win here." Kate looked at his image. This creature had ordered the attack on Mira 7. He had ordered the capture of human children. He had called humanity prey. She smiled at him. The same cold smile she had worn since the beginning. "You still do not understand," she said. "We were never trying to win. We were trying to get here. And now we have." The battle began. It was not a single fight. It was 100 fights happening at once. Human destroyers dueled with Vrak warships. Allied fighters swarmed around the orbital platforms. Troop transports tried to break through the chaos and reach the planet below. Commander Nick Palmer led a squadron of 5 destroyers into the heart of the Vrak formation. His ship, the Persistence, had survived 20 battles. His crew had become legends among the fleet. "Stay together," he ordered his ships. "Cover each other." We punched through to the transport, so we die trying. They punched through. 3 of his 5 ships were destroyed. The Persistence took a hit that killed everyone in the engine room. But they created a gap in the Vrak lines. A gap wide enough for the transports. Captain Julia West was on one of those transports. Her ship, the Unbroken, was not really a warship anymore. It had been converted to carry Marines to the surface. 300 soldiers packed into a vessel that shook with every explosion outside. "We are going in," Julia announced over the speakers. "Hold on to something." The Unbroken dove through the gap in the Vrak fleet. Weapons fire streaked past. One shot hit the side of the ship and killed 20 Marines instantly. But Julia did not stop. She could not stop. Not when they were this close. She brought the ship down through the atmosphere. The Vrak homeworld rushed up toward them. Factories and towers in the Great Slave Complex, where human prisoners were kept. A Vrak missile hit the Unbroken's engines. Julia felt the ship start to die. Alarms screamed. Fire spread through the corridors. She had maybe 30 seconds before they crashed. "Everyone out," she screamed. "Go, go, go." The Marines jumped from the falling ship. Their landing gear slowed them enough to survive. Julia stayed at the controls, trying to aim the crash away from her people. The Unbroken hit the ground in a ball of fire. Julia West died on impact. She was 38 years old. She had been a tourist ship captain once, but her Marines survived. Corporal Amy Chun was among them. The young woman who had once studied cooking now carried a rifle and wore battle armor. She looked at the wreckage of the Unbroken, at the fire and smoke where her captain had died, and she felt grief trying to rise in her chest. She pushed it down. There would be time for grief later. Right now, there was work to do. "Move out," she ordered her squad. "The slave complex is 3 kilometers north. Let the grief come later. Right now, we have children to save." They fought through the streets of the Vrak capital. Every building held enemies. Every corner could hide an ambush. Amy lost soldiers with every block they advanced, but they kept going. Above them, the space battle raged on. Commander Nick Palmer watched his screens and saw the Persistence was dying. His engines were gone. His weapons were nearly empty. Half his crew was dead. "Sir," said his first officer, "we should withdraw. Find a place to make repairs." Nick shook his head. "There is no withdrawal. There is only through." He pointed at the display showing a wrack carrier about to destroy a human troop transport. "One more target. Just one more." He ordered the Persistence to ram the carrier. His crew did not argue. They had followed him through 20 battles. They would follow him through this one too. The Persistence hit the wrack carrier at full speed. Both ships exploded in a bloom of fire and metal. The troop transport survived. 300 more Marines reached the surface. Nick Palmer was 42 years old. He had been an asteroid miner before the war. On the planet's surface, Amy's squad reached the slave complex. It was a massive building, gray and ugly, surrounded by walls and guards. Inside were thousands of prisoners, slaves from a dozen species. And somewhere in there, the children of Myra 7. Below the wall, Amy ordered. Her demolition expert set charges and detonated them. The wall crumbled. The Marines poured through. The fighting inside was brutal. Close quarters. Room by room. Amy killed more wrack in 1 hour than she had in the entire war. She did not think about it. She could not think about it. She just moved forward. Then she found the cells. Rows and rows of tiny rooms with metal doors. Inside each one were prisoners. Turani and Morthy and Selvak and dozens of other species. Amy's soldiers opened door after door, freeing everyone they found. And then Amy found a cell with a human child inside. A girl, maybe 7 years old. Thin and dirty and terrified. She pressed herself against the back wall when Amy entered. Too scared to even scream, Amy took off her helmet so the girl could see her face. Human face. Friendly face. She knelt down and held out her hand. "Hey there," she said softly. Her voice shook a little. "My name is Amy. We came to take you home." The girl stared at her for a long moment. Then understanding filled her eyes. Tears ran down her dirty cheeks. She threw herself into Amy's arms and sobbed. Amy held her tight. Around them, more cells were opening. More children were being found. Not as many as there should have been. 18 months was a long time. The wrack had not been kind, but some had survived. Some were still alive. Amy carried the little girl out of the cell. Outside, the sounds of battle were fading. The wrack guards were dead or captured. The slave complex was free. She looked up at the sky. Through the smoke and clouds, she could see flashes of light. The space battle was ending too. "It is over," she whispered to the child in her arms. "It is all over. You are safe now." On the Relentless, Admiral Kate Vance received a transmission from the surface. Prisoners secured. Children found. Extraction beginning. She closed her eyes for a moment and let herself feel something she had not allowed for 18 months. Hope. The wrack Dominions surrendered 6 hours later. Their fleet was broken. Their capital was occupied. Their empire was finished. Kate insisted that the Supreme Hierarch be taken alive. She wanted him to face justice. She wanted him to answer for what he had done. They found him in his tower, surrounded by dead guards. He had refused to flee. He had refused to surrender. In the end, he had just sat on his throne and waited for the humans to come. "You should have stayed in your own space," he told Kate when she stood before him. "You should have accepted your nature. Prey does not hunt. It is not natural." Kate looked at the ancient slaver. She thought about all the lives he had destroyed, all the children he had taken, all the pain he had caused. "You were right about one thing," she said quietly. "We did not used to hunt. We had forgotten how. We were happy being peaceful, building things, helping people." She stepped closer, and her voice dropped to a whisper. "But then you reminded us. You woke something up inside us. Something very old and very patient and very, very angry." She turned and walked away. "Thank you for that," she said over her shoulder. "We will never forget what we are capable of again." The Supreme Hierarch was taken to a prison cell. He would stand trial for his crimes. He would spend the rest of his life answering for what he had done. The hunt was over, but the galaxy would never forget what it had witnessed. The war ended on a Tuesday, the same day of the week it had started, 18 months earlier. Admiral Kate Vance thought about that as she watched the last wrecked ship surrender. Life was strange sometimes. Time moved in circles. The Galactic Concord called an emergency meeting. Every elder race sent representatives. They gathered in their ancient chamber and waited for the humans to arrive. Executor Vorn stood at the entrance. The giant Keth, who had once looked down on humans with pity, now watched the human delegation walk past him. They were so small, so soft. Their bodies had no armor, no claws, no natural weapons of any kind. Yet they had destroyed an empire. Ambassador Ruth Espinoza led the human group. She was 60 years old, with gray streaked through her dark hair. Before the war, she had been a schoolteacher. She had taught children how to read and write and think for themselves. Then her government had asked her to speak for humanity. Among the stars, she took her place at the council table and waited. Executor Vorn spoke first. His voice was different now. The arrogance was gone. Something else had replaced it. Something that sounded almost like awe. "You have done what no species in galactic history has accomplished," he said. "You destroyed a slaver empire that had stood for 1,000 years. You freed over 200,000 beings of 17 different species. You transformed from a peaceful civilization to a military power in less than 2 years." He paused, and his great eyes studied the small humans before him. "Now we must ask the question that all of us have wondered since this began. What does humanity want now? What happens next?" Ruth stood up slowly. She looked around the chamber at all the alien faces watching her. The Keth with their claws and armor. The Vreth with their insect eyes. The Deloni floating in their water tanks. All of them were afraid, she realized. Not of humans exactly, but of what humans might become. "We want what we have always wanted," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "Peace, trade, exploration, cooperation. We want to go back to building hospitals on frontier worlds. We want to send aid ships to people who need help. We want to be the species you knew before all this started." The Vreth ambassador made a clicking sound. "Can you? After everything that has happened? You have awakened something inside yourselves. A capacity for violence that rivals any predator species. How do you put that back to sleep?" Ruth was quiet for a moment. She thought about the question carefully. It was a good question, an important one. "We do not put it back to sleep," she finally said. "We never forgot that it was there. We simply chose not to use it. That is what you never understood about us. You saw our kindness and thought we were weak. You saw our cooperation and thought we were soft. But kindness is not the same as weakness. Choosing peace is not the same as being unable to fight." She looked directly at Executor Vorn. "We contain multitudes," she said. "We always have. The same species that built hospitals also built weapons. The same people who created art and music and poetry also fought wars that killed millions. We are capable of terrible violence and incredible compassion. We are capable of hunting our enemies to the ends of the galaxy and then healing our prisoners when the fight is done." She sat back down. "That is what we are. That is what we have always been. You just never saw all of us before." The council was silent for a long time. Then Executor Vorn nodded slowly. "Very well," he said. "The Galactic Concord must update its records." Humanity was classified as a prey species. That classification was clearly wrong. But we do not know what to call you instead. You are not predators as we understand them. You are something else. Call us human, Ruth said simply. That is enough. The meeting ended. The elder races went back to their own corners of the galaxy. They talked among themselves about what they had witnessed. They warned their children about the strange species from a distant star. "Don't be friends with humans," they said. "Trade with them. Learn from them. They are generous and kind and will help you in your darkest hour, but never threaten their families. Never take their children. Never make them hug you, because once humanity shifts into hunter mode, nothing is ever the same after." On Earth, the soldiers came home. They landed at spaceports and stepped off their ships into crowds of cheering people. Families ran to embrace their loved ones. Children held up signs with their parents' names. Corporal Amy Chun walked down the ramp of a transport ship and felt Earth's sun on her face for the first time in a year. She was 23 now. She felt much older. A little girl ran through the crowd and grabbed Amy's leg. It was the child she had rescued from the slave cell. The girl's name was Emma. She was 8 years old now. Her parents had died on Myra 7, so she had been adopted by a family on Earth. But she had asked to come to the spaceport today. She had asked to see Amy again. "You came back," Emma said, looking up with bright eyes. Amy knelt down and hugged her. "I told you I would take you home. I always keep my promises." Dr. Marcus Webb returned to civilian medicine. He opened a small clinic in a quiet town and spent his days treating broken bones and common colds. Sometimes, late at night, he thought about the Vrak soldier he had saved. He wondered if that soldier had survived the war. He wondered if any of it had mattered. It had mattered, he decided. Every act of kindness mattered. That was the whole point. Admiral Kate Vance retired. She was 72 years old now, and her body was tired. She moved to a small house by the ocean and spent her days watching the waves. Sometimes reporters came to interview her. They always asked the same questions. How did you win? What was your strategy? What made humanity so effective? Kate always gave the same answer. "We did not try to win battles," she said. "We tried to end a problem. There is a difference. Predators fight for territory or food. They win, they take what they want, they stop. But hunters are different. Hunters chase their prey until the chase is over. They do not stop because they are tired. They do not stop because they are hurt. They only stop when the prey is caught." She would look out at the ocean when she said this. The water stretched to the horizon, endless and patient. That is what the Vrak never understood. We were not trying to defeat them in a war. We were hunting them. And humans never give up a hunt. The galaxy changed after that. No species ever attacked humanity again. The elder races traded with humans and learned from them and sometimes asked for their help. But they also remembered. The Terani told stories to their children about the soft creatures who freed them. The Morthi sang songs about human courage. The Selvak built statues of the soldiers who had died for their freedom. And the Vrak? The Vrak were gone as a power. Their empire became 17 free worlds. Their former slaves built new lives among the stars. Some Vrak learned to live peacefully alongside the species they had once enslaved. Others could not accept the change and faded away into history. The Supreme Hierarch died in prison. He never apologized. He never admitted he was wrong. To his last breath, he believed that humans were prey, pretending to be something else. He died still confused about what had happened to him. Years passed. Then decades. Humanity went back to being what it had always been. traders and explorers and builders and healers. They established new colonies. They made new friends. They helped species in need. But they never forgot. In every human school, children learned about the war. They learned about Myra 7 and the children who were taken. They learned about Kate Vance and Julia West and Nick Palmer and Amy Chun and all the others who had fought. They learned about the old nature that lived inside every human being. And they learned the lesson that the galaxy had learned too. Humanity was kind. Humanity was generous. Humanity was peaceful. But if you threatened their families, if you took their children, if you made yourself their prey, then you would learn something else about humanity. You would learn about the hunters. And once humanity shifted into hunter mode, nothing was ever the same after. The stars remembered. The galaxy remembered. And humanity remembered. It was who they were. It was who they had always been. Both the healers and the hunters. Both. The builders and the destroyers. Both the soft creatures who built hospitals and the relentless predators who chased their enemies to the ends of the universe. All of it was human. All of it was true. And the galaxy had finally learned not to wake the sleeping hunter. Not ever again.